Hey there, Miss Osuna here. Looking forward to doing another tutorial with you on sapphire earrings. For this demo, you're going to need blue markers from dark blue all the way up to light blue, and then white gel pen or whiteout or both. Fine liner, that's going to be black ink, and then we will also be using our pencil and our colored pencils as well. Go on ahead and draw your teardrop shape for the earrings, as well as a center line at the top center of it, and then two diagonal lines at the bottom, and then a second teardrop shape in the center. So start off by drawing in the shape of your earrings, just as I have here. It's sort of a teardrop shape, and then we are going to move from there with a straight line at the very top center, and then two straight lines on the left and the right to give kind of a triangular effect. Then you'll have another teardrop shape in the center, which will represent our table. Starting off with diagonal lines that are like triangle or like a letter V. That's going to be in our medium to darker range blue, and they're on the bottom and on the left side, a tiny little bit on the right side. Then we're going to switch it over and we're going to go to a blue that has a little bit more of a turquoisey vibe to it, and that is going to be added more to the center of our earring. So here we are adding those same diagonal lines, leaving lots of white spaces so that we can see the difference, and that's the key. You want to see the difference in these colors. So the first one was that medium to darker range. The second one is going medium to lighter range. And this works for any kind of color combination. But this second time around, really we're focusing on the center of our earring more. Still leaving white spaces. These are just diagonal lines. Now up next, we're going to go in and we are going to add another level. And this next level of color is really important because now we're on level 3. And this is a different tone of blue. It's still light blue in that family, but now you're starting to fill in more, still leaving some light spaces. But now we're capturing all 3 types of blues, and we're filling in more of our spaces. Now we're going to bring some highlights out. So again, we left some white spaces on purpose, but we're going to add to that with our gel pen. Depends what kind of gel pen you have, how opaque it is, or how see-through it is. So if yours is not that opaque, and if it is very, very translucent and see-through, then you might need to do this twice or 3 times. But we're adding in the facets with it first. And you can see those facets there's 4 of them, rectangular shape, and then lines and dots with that same pen very lightly at the top of our earring first, and then just a tiny bit on the bottom. So opposites. The very, very top center has more, and then the bottom has fewer lines and dots. Now we're moving to our fine liner, and we're adding some dark, dark black. And these are lines that are just accenting the blue. And these are the blues that are in the shadows, but super light touch. We're not pressing hard at all, and they're mostly at the bottom of the earring. Now switch to your pencil and let's start to pull out the difference between the table, which are the stones you see the reflection on the top versus the sides. So just darken those table edges and then even the outer edges of your earring to kind of pull out the shape. And now we're going to move on to our gray. This is a medium to light range, and we're going to touch the outer edges just to define, barely touch the page though. We don't want to take away the color of blue. We're just defining these edges. So now we've let the facets dry with our white, and we'll put the gray on top center of it. So we still see little bits of white on the left and the right, but this gives you that metal faceted look, as if the prongs are coming up around the edges. So a little bit of that same gray in the middle of those white faceted areas so that the stone is connected to the actual earring. And that is basically the process. And now we repeat 1,000,000 times. So you want to have all these layers. So we're going back in now with the fine liner, darkening around the facets. And you'll notice every time we do something, we will knock it down a bit. So we're putting this in pretty heavily just to see where these facets are attaching the stone. But then we're going to go back on top in a minute and we're going to knock it down. We're putting this in to see the table, which is the top of our stone versus the sides. But again, we're going to knock it down. So here is me knocking it down with the blue. So I have the medium to darker blue, and we're going around those edges right on top of the black fine liner just to soften and, like I said, to knock it down so the black doesn't appear so harshly. And as you go around those edges of black fine liner, you can add a little bit more blue as you see fit to your actual stone. And now we're going to go back in and just repeat this entire process. So we're going to darken and layer as many times as necessary so that the stone starts to pop out. We want the table, the top part of our stone, to be clear. So that was my gray. And now I'm going in, instead of this time with the white gel pen, a little tiny bit of a few lines of white colored pencil. So that's that difference in contrast that you want to have. Sometimes we're using gel pen, sometimes we're using colored pencil, sometimes we'll be using whiteout, and all of that leads to good highlights. So we're just repeating this process. I put down those highlights with the colored pencil. Now I'm picking up my mechanical pencil to define those edges again. And now I'm adding that gel pen back on top because you need that layering. It's also a good idea to step back from your work. So you need to actually do the work for maybe, say, 5 to 7 minutes. Then stop what you're doing, stand up, hold the work away from you, and see where you need to add or where you need to remove. All right, so I'm just repeating the same entire process. I'm looking to add darker darks with my darker blue marker. These are alcohol-based markers, so they blend nicely. But again, you don't want to be heavy. Every time you do one round of one marker, you want to make sure that you stop, stand back, kind of take a look at it, and only touch the paper lightly. And never touch on top of something that you've already colored unless you feel like you need more color in that specific place. Sometimes I notice people do that unknowingly. They're blending, for example, but we're not even using the blender here. But sometimes people are blending or putting color on top of something they've already finished. So don't overwork your artwork. Just make sure you do the work that you're supposed to do by following that process. Layer up those different thicknesses, the different dark, medium, and lights, and then stand back and take a look. So in my standing back and taking a look, I'm going to reshape by adding more to the bottom edges. And that's really important because you only can see that when you stand back. So here I am just adding a tiny little bit more to the outer edges just to reshape it a bit. First I did it with a really, really soft light blue, then I switched over to a little bit of gray. And that reshaping is just because I noticed from a distance the left side, right side was not similar enough. All right, so here I am adding back more highlights to those facets just to make sure that we can see the prongs that are coming up and around the stone. And when you layer it, sometimes it dulls out and you have to go back and add that white back on top to bring it back out. And then sometimes when you add the white back on top, it's too bright and you knock it down again. It's that back and forth of the layering, and that's true for all of your good quality work. You will need to add those layers back and forth. More fine liner here just to define a few of those darks once again. And soon we'll be done with this and we'll be moving on to the top portion of our earring. And now I'm knocking down some of that fine liner, just a tiny bit with gray. And again, I'm always using the fine point side just because the space is pretty small. Essentially, you're going to wash, rinse, repeat. You're going to do this several times, this back and forth of these layers, making sure you get all the different parts that you want, and then you move on to the next part. Up next, we're moving on to the top of our earring because we are done with the bottom. So now for the top, we are starting off with these diagonal lines, and again, it's just to start to get a sense of where you're placing your color, top, bottom, left, right, and that was with our medium blue. And now we're going to go in with a darker right around it, diagonal lines, and we're just defining these edges. And then touches of the lightest blue. That's what's coming next. Again, you don't want to color everything ever. You always want to leave white spaces so you can decide when to knock things down. Now we're putting the white gel pen on top to pull out some highlights. And also this earring has prongs that are coming up and around, so that's going to be happening with the white gel pen as well. So you have 4 prongs in total. And now we're just adding some of that gray, just a tiny little bit, to start to define those edges and the circle of the hoop that connects the top part of the earring to the bottom. Now mechanical pencil, define some of those edges on top even more. And again, you can pick whatever shape you want. This just happens to be a teardrop shape and also kind of a rectangular rounded shape at the top. And then now we are balancing things out, just going left and right with both of the gel pen hitting both earrings. So just to kind of balance off the entire work as opposed to focusing on one side. So now we're just repeating once again. This is the outer edges, and we're defining that both left side, right side now because we're almost done. And those outer edges should feel like there is an edge, but you don't want it to take away the attention from focusing on the gem. Repeating that same process on those outer edges for left and right side now with the gray marker. And again, that's a medium to light gray, but you don't want it to take away. And the gray marker is also used to give that chrome feeling because this is a silver setting that is connecting and holding everything together. So now that we've done that with our gray to kind of balance things off, stand up, take a look. That's always a necessary part of your work. And then go back in with your blues if you feel like you have less blue. In this case, my right side of my sketch has a shadow. So you'll notice the right side of the earring is going to feel darker. And in this sketch, the left side has the light source. So the earring on the left side of our page feels lighter entirely. And then the earring on the right side of the page feels darker entirely. But we're using the same process and the same technique for both. You just want to follow your shadow and light the way that you have everything lit. And this is adding some white out, just a touch, and then you knock it back down. All right, so you've taken all this time to do all this work. Again, you just need to stop, stand up, and look. I can't emphasize how important that is. Step back. Even paste your work or tape it up to something so you can see at eye level while you're standing about 5 feet away. And put those finishing touches, and then you are done. That's it for this demo. I'm really looking forward to seeing your work, and I will see you next time in class.